Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Edgy Tim here in the Edgy Nation headquarters. Appreciate you checking in. And, well, another edition of Now What? And it's one of those weeks, another now what kind of scenario. So let's talk a little bit about what's coming up this week. Obviously, the 1,000-pound elephant in the room. I'm not just talking about myself. IHSA emergency board meeting is Wednesday. We are kind of being told and kind of led to believe that we are going to get some form of guidance information from the IHSA this Wednesday regarding fall sports, which obviously from my concern and your concern if you're watching this, IHSA football, we will hopefully get some guidance. I have been asked every single day, maybe every hour of every single day for the past 3 months, when are we going to start football? Depended a while on the day, how things went. So I've been asked quite a bit, really, especially over the last week or so. What do I think is going to happen? Well, what's been interesting about all of this is, usually there's some leaks here and there, and you hear from some well-placed sources, and I'm very thankful to have some of those. Kind of where things are heading and what's going to happen, and those sources have been really reliable over the last several years for me. No one's hearing anything. I mean, things are incredibly quiet right now. I saw that there's been some comments here and there, but as far as the people that I trust and who I talk to regarding these issues and what's going on kind of behind the scenes, there's nothing out there. So that kind of leads me to believe we're not going to start on time in the fall, and quite honestly, I don't think we're going to play in the fall. I just think with everything that's going on right now in the COVID world, again, I don't want to get in a big debate about all this stuff, but the numbers are not exactly continuing to stay low. They're kind of steadily progressing up. That is not a good sign. Looking at the history of how this state has handled this pandemic, and again, compared to a lot of other states, Illinois has done a pretty darn good job of managing it. But for our purposes and what we want to see, it just doesn't fare well. You throw in what's going on recently. More and more college football programs are, Division III. I think almost all the Division III schools are not playing football this year, or not playing in the fall, I should say. A lot of them moving to the spring. So there's a couple of big question marks out there that I think everyone needs to pay attention to for various reasons. College football and the NCAA. We have not really seen any definite thoughts, guidance coming out of the NCAA or the major college football. The conferences. Big Ten is playing on a conference-only schedule, so as of right now, they're all planning to move forward. My thought, personally, I just don't see it happening because of the way this pandemic is spread, and it's all over the country. In case you've paid attention to the news in Major League Baseball the last few days, the Miami Marlins suddenly have an outbreak, and now all of a sudden Major League Baseball is up in the air. So with all these outside things going on, and then let's just take into consideration here, school districts are still trying to figure this thing out. And as many on our free message boards have pointed out, what about the schools that are going to go fully at-home learning? And that's a whole other subject we can get into someday. But, how are you supposed to have online learning, not in school, yet have sports, and reopen up the school that you closed because of COVID for practices, for events? I don't see it. Obviously, if I'm in Central Illinois, Southern Illinois, well, I got to be careful with that now because, the metro area down in St. Louis, those numbers are spiking on the Missouri side, so, and as well as on the Illinois side. So certainly that portion of Southern Illinois is not anywhere remotely safe from this pandemic. But certainly in Central Illinois and lots of parts of Southern Illinois, you're upset. I don't blame you. But you go Chicagoland proper, it's a whole other deal with this pandemic. I just don't see it happening in the fall. What about safety of teachers returning back to the classroom? We heard very little of that, and it's not right because we should. That's very important because let's face it, those teachers also happen to be your coaches. Millions and millions of issues regarding this, and I just think high school sports and high school football is not real high on the priority list right now when it comes to getting some things in line for the fall. And so I think best case scenario is the IHSA decides to suspend all the fall sports. Maybe your cross country or quote unquote non-contact sports, hey, let them go in the fall. Totally fine with that if they're able to get their season in, great. But I think the contact sports, I think they're going to get moved to the spring, as many have talked about before. I see a scenario where you're going to have a time frame probably right after basketball and before baseball. I can see where basketball gets shortened this year, just 1 year. So I'm sure the basketball people love that. Then football fitting in from, say, early March through April, early mid-May. Then I can see baseball, softball starting a bit later than usual. I see them starting maybe early to mid-May. And again, best case scenario, I don't see a full 9-week schedule if it goes to the spring. I see maybe 6 or 7 at the most. I can foresee playoffs, but I don't foresee 8 classes and 64 teams, and I don't see it. I see a much smaller playoff format. Think old school. Think back to when conference champion only got into the playoffs. Yeah, that'll make some of you not real happy, but again, under this 1 year scenario, I can foresee something to that effect. And again, there's more questions regarding that. What do you do for the 2021 season, which all of a sudden becomes 2 separate seasons into one? Again, bigger questions that need to be asked and answered before all this gets laid out. So hopefully we get some guidance from Wednesday. I hope to God I'm wrong. I have a feeling I'm probably a little more on than I think off. But, fingers crossed and hope for the best. So a lot of the things we're going to get into over the next week or so, especially once we have some news one way or the other. We're definitely going to talk a lot about recruiting because, I went to Rise and Fire this weekend on Sunday. And again, thanks to Greg Holcomb and everyone at Next Athletic. And what Greg does is great stuff with his quarterbacks. Every parent there, every kid there wanted to know about recruiting. What can I do differently? What can I do more? How can I get in front of college coaches? And quite honestly, the very simple answer right now is there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do. College coaches I've talked to, they are right now focusing in on the kids they have committed. Many of them have offers out. But quite honestly, it's in the back of their mind right now a little bit because they are trying to prep and get ready for what they hope they have a season. And again, I talked about watching that timing with NCAA and when decisions really start coming out, how that can impact recruiting. Recruiting-wise, we're still under a dead period. We haven't seen any rhyme or reason or any kind of word if that's going to change anytime soon. I got to imagine eventually they're going to have to address it. They, meaning the NCAA, is going to have to address the entire dead recruiting period that we continue to be under right now. So what does that mean for you as a recruit or as a parent? Well, as long as there's a dead recruiting period, you cannot go on college campuses. You can't make visits. You can go on college campuses. You can't interact with the coaches. I know a lot of kids now, kids that have offers are literally just driving out to colleges just to walk around and look around. You can do that whenever you want to. But as far as officially meeting the coaches and being greeted, walking around facilities, you're just not allowed to do that under the dead period. Most importantly, camps. Rise and Fire was this weekend. There were a couple others. As far as from a recruiting standpoint, they don't really mean much of anything. You can, if you want to go and get work in, sure. But even that, there are some risks, and it's great. There are a handful of kids on Twitter that kind of tag me on some of their thoughts about the camps, and kids were worried about going to camps because they were afraid they were going to catch COVID and give it back to their teammates. That's a real concern. I mean, I don't know if people are aware of that or just don't care. I can tell you I wore a mask the entire time I covered Rise and Fire, and I did that out of protection for myself and for others. I was one of the few that actually wore a mask. So again, it's really a crapshoot right now. And as far as camps, there's really, people keep asking me, "What, are you aware of any other camps in Illinois and this area?" No, not really. I'm not aware of anything. I don't think anyone wants to schedule anything until, number one, we know what's going on with the fall. Number two, until there's some kind of guidance that the NCAA is going to lift the dead period. Now, once we lift the dead period, we go into either quiet or an open period. College coaches can, well, actually not the quiet, but the open period. College coaches can get on the road. And once they can get on the road, I have a feeling we will have a very robust camp season. I've already been approached to run camps. And as I've said before all this, and the reason, and I posted this earlier, why I haven't done camps, is because of COVID and the concerns. I don't want to be liable. I don't want to be that guy that runs a camp where kids get sick and they pass it on to somebody. That's a lot of liability I don't want to take on. And again, it has really nothing to do with any legal ramifications. It's more, I guess we'll call it a moral dilemma. I want kids to be safe. And, under this scenario, I'm not a medical expert. You can go to my free message boards. There are tons of medical experts there. Twitter, loaded with medical experts, and Facebook. God, Facebook is like the AMA these days. Everybody knows exactly how to handle this COVID pandemic. And, I go with what I think is the right thing to do. And right now, I just don't see running a camp. Hopefully we get to that point, and I'll be all over it. But, for right now, I think you got to sit and be tight and be patient. And I suggested this before, a virtual combine video. And I used EFT. Go to EFT online, EFT on Twitter. They've put together some virtual combine videos for kids. They can do it. Or honestly, the format is very easy to follow. I think it's important that you video shoot it the way they did, especially the testing phase, the 40, the 5, 10, 5. Because at least college coaches can self-time it if it's videotaped properly. But to me, that's a great way of showing coaches what you can do now versus maybe what you were able to do a year ago. I've had coaches come back to me and say, "Well, what about if my kid doesn't test well?" Well, that's a whole other thing that you need to obviously address with your athlete. Put together a skills video. You don't necessarily need to test or run a 40 with a skills video. If you're a lineman, drill work, anything you can show college coaches that you're working and how maybe you're progressing in your game, I think can help. But for right now, not a whole lot of options in the recruiting side. All right, so I've rambled on. We got a lot going on this week. And it just never gets dull. It never does. Again, appreciate you continuing to support me and what I'm trying to do here. Probably as motivated as ever now to continue to write all this out, continue to bring you content, and try to do the best I can for you, my fans, as support of the Edgy Nation, and really for high school football out there in general. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. And keep the faith. Hang in there, and this too shall pass. Thanks.